The Middle East has for many years been a region mired in conflict, and today the civil war in Syria is no exception. For over 16 months now, rebels have clashed with the government forces of President Bashar al-Assad, which has left large parts of the country in ruin. Much of the country's population is displaced, homeless, and in some cases worse. One man who has been left homeless by the conflict is Father Paolo Dall'Oglio, an Italian Jesuit who spent the last 3 decades living in Syria. He was expelled from the country by the Assad government in June of this year after speaking out against them and lending his support to the uprising. He has since begun to travel the world to raise awareness for the suffering incurred by the Syrian people. He joins us in the studio today for Catholic Focus. Father Paolo, welcome to Salt and Light. It's a pleasure to have you here with us.
The pleasure mine.
Could you please tell us a little bit about a background of your ministry in Syria?
I was born in Rome in 1954 and a Jesuit by 1975 and in Lebanon to study Arabic by 1977. And then I came to Syria in 80 to study Islam more deeply. And all this because of a mission, a desire. My vocation was to embody the big change of the Second Vatican Council in the relationship with religions and very particularly with Muslims. From, let's say, from fear to friendship, from refusal to closeness, from, let's say, from judgment to respect. And in fact, Damascus was a great field for that, because people in Damascus from thousands of years are living together, Muslims and Christians, and I learned from them the good neighborhood practice, the friendship on the ground, interreligious friendship.
Tell us a little bit about Deir Marmusa Monastery.
That is also a nice story. In 1982, there was war between Israel in Lebanon. The Israeli army went up to Beirut, and I was with the man in charge of human help from the Vatican, and we came in Lebanon to visit all this. And it was, for me, the first shock was the war, with the people wounded in the hospitals, with the destroyed towns and all this. And then I came to Damascus in summer, and I wanted to have my spiritual exercise. And I asked her, do we have in our, I was interested in the Syria Catholic Church, do we have a place for prayer in the mountain, an old monastery or something? And then, yes, we have. It is an old, abandoned, destroyed monastery. You'll not be able to stay there for the night, but you can go and visit. And I stayed there for 8 days, 10 days in prayer, and then I fall in love. You know, it was such an incredible place. You have to imagine rocky mountains and a kind of castle of stones with a church that only after I knew it was from the 11th century, with an incredible amount of frescoes from the Middle Age, just open to heaven, you know, without a roof. I fall in love, and I still am, and then it started an incredible adventure of camps for youth, of work and prayer and hospitality, and then the restoration, scientific restoration, a school of restoration for Syrian people with Italian teachers. And then by the 90s, the foundation of a community of men and women, brothers and sisters, committed to the love of Jesus for Muslim and Islam. So a community committed to the harmony building between Muslims and Christians.
Oh, it sounds wonderful. Last month, Father, you were very famously expelled from Syria. Tell us a little bit about that.
We have worked for the last 10, 20 years for the growing of a civil society, for having interreligious, frank, simple, transparent dialogues. Many youth started to come to the monastery. This was a movement, let's say, already very watched upon from the security of the state. Already by 2010, our work was stopped. The dialogue was forbidden. The regional environmental, cultural, spiritual protected area was abolished. All our conferences were forbidden, so already a big difficulty. Then the spring came, and our youth, those who've been with us, most of them stand for democracy and for human rights. And we have worked so much for reconciliation in order to avoid the falling in civil war and using of weapons, and trying to ask for the right of the freedom of opinion and expression. And on this base, already by November 2011, there was a decree to my bishop, to asking the bishop from the state to change the head of the monastery and to send me out of the country. And then suddenly people from both the opposition and also people close to the state, they said, no, we want to have Father Paolo in Syria. There was even a Sunday of Father Paolo with people in the streets asking for my stay. I mean, I become, without knowing that, a kind of symbol of the need of reconciliation in Syria. The refusal to step just on this side against the other one. And the state just accepted the deal, but with the Kofi Annan initiative, and before it with the Arab League initiative, there was a signature of the Syrian government on the freedom of expression and opinion. So why shall I stay silent? So I started to speak out because the danger was growing and growing. Last winter was really the growing of this condition of civil war. So I risked my stay to bring witness to freedom and reconciliation. And the end of the story was last June, when the bishop told me there was no more room and I should go. Also because they were very much afraid I would be killed by somebody. So this is what happened.
What is being done in terms of the reconciliation movement in Syria today?
In September 2011, we had a fasting time with youth from all religions coming in the monastery, fasting, praying, discussing, in order to see how to reconcile the society. And as I told you, the only condition, the condition I'm ready to die for, is the freedom of opinion and conscience. We were willing to go in the street with this reconciliation issue. Now Syria is very divided. In Homs, when, for example, the two old Christian part of the town has been emptied by the war, 150,000 Christians had left the town. All the churches have been destroyed by the shelling of the army. And the society was so divided, and still is, between Sunni, Alawites, the Christians are a bit in the middle. So there was a need for a movement of reconciliation. And some very good people, Muslim and Christian, started to meet in order to reconcile the town on the ground, grass level. Then I have heard, after I went out of Syria, that this word reconciliation is now used for saying, okay, the repression won, the revolution failed, now come back to a kind of reconciliation. We need to recover the harmony of Syria, and it is true, we need to recover the harmony of Syria. But to tell you simply what I see, I don't think that the youth that have been doing this revolution, they will give up. They have suffered so much. We have 20,000 people dead. We have hundreds of thousands of families have been deeply wounded in their affects, in the members. People are in jail. Thousands of people have been tortured. At least, I mean, before this battle of Aleppo and Damascus was probably farther than 2 million people displaced inside the country. We are now probably close to 3 million people displaced. So I don't think that there is just a way to go back and to say we were more happy before. But before, there was martial law, people imprisoned for years and years without the family knowing about them, people expelled, people forbidden to travel. The massive attitude of repression is the reality of 40 years. I do not think that we can make reconciliation just going back. We will make reconciliation by going further, recognizing the will of the youth for freedom and to take care of the intercommunitarian harmony. And probably we need international help, we need the United Nations presence on the ground to realize this without major disasters and massacres.
Well, that leads me to my next question, and specifically, what role do you feel, if any, that the international community should play in helping resolve the conflict and the rebuilding of Syria?
I mean, we are, all of us, in an astonishment. Syria has been used as the ring for fight in the regional and global level. There is today what we can call a Sunni Shiite, the inter-Islamic civil war happening in Syria, a side of the revolution. And so far, on a diplomatic level, the people who are with Iran are against those who are with Saudis or with Turkey. And Russia is asking for his own rights or interests on a geostrategical level in the continent. And this is a clash with the Atlantic interests. So Syria is paying the bill for everybody. 16 months of disaster and crimes and suffering because the international community are not able to speak to each other. They're not able to negotiate. They're not able to come to a common word. This is too much. I have said this to the foreign minister of Canada 2 days ago. He really, some days ago, and he really heard with a lot of interest and worry and empathy. And there was a delegation of Syrians expatriated in Canada, and he was really friendly, and it looks like Canada willing to do something for people on the ground. I hope that Canada will lead also a diplomatic initiative to have a new start on a diplomatic level.
Certainly. And what do you see the role of the church being in the resolution of this conflict?
I say that the churches should be, the Christians should be like a meniscus in this painful knee. We need a cartilage between all those bones. The problem is that many Christians are afraid of the change. There's been so much taught that the Islamic extremisms will take over, and so that many have left the country and many are looking forward to leave the country, and even some people in charge in the Christian community has been used by the lies of the regime that there is nothing on the ground of a revolution, there is nothing else that terrorism and anti-terrorism fight. And so they have accepted this story it is pitiful, because this does not offer the right image of the church as caring for the entire society. When we have youth, men and women, Christians have been jailed, tortured. They are with the people in the street in Friday asking for freedom. I see that those people are doing this for their love for God, for humanity, for Jesus, for others. They are real Christians. They're not terrorists.
Many in the Christian community of Syria have found themselves as victims of violence, killing, of strife, many of them driven from their homes by both sides of the conflict. What would you say to those that say that a new government would mean that the Christian community faces even greater peril than they face with the current government?
If we face history like tribes, then in a logic of tribe solidarity, I can understand that Christians can say a group of minorities together, they will be stronger than a majority, and they can keep some interests in this way. But this is not our mission. This is not our identity as Christians. And to tell you the truth, this is not historically real, because the Christian has been 14th century with the Sunni Muslims in the same towns, in the same villages, in the same markets, in the same place of life. So why the 40 last years of the regime should have changed completely the panorama of the Arabic world? So even in Hama, when in 1982 more than 20,000 people were killed by the repression, the Christian inside the shelled town from earth and heaven, the Christian had been in solidarity with the Sunni neighbors. And in 1982, the churches were destroyed together with the mosques. And in Homs, this time happened exactly the same. Churches and mosques have been destroyed altogether. I'll not say that there is not a danger of extremism in Syria. Now, more than 1 year ago, because the international community did nothing, those who have been able to find and use weapons are somehow the more extreme ones. So the Free Army, nevertheless, is composed by people that refuse to fight, to kill their own friends and their own brothers and their own people. So then they withdraw from, they escape from the official army, and they started to create groups, and now this is being organized. And I don't see in this people a danger for the harmony between Christians and Muslims at all. But in some areas, the civil war logic is going on, and the Christians are trapped in the middle. Some of them are with the regime in such an extent that they are fighting, so in the end they will be obliged to go, and many have been obliged to leave the places.
What risk does the Christian community in Syria face in becoming another Iraq, where these extremist elements in the country destabilize it to the point that we see a mass exodus of Christians from the country?
The Iraqi story was a very bitter one. There was a lack of knowledge about the situation on the ground. The Christian were somehow protected by Saddam. From this point of view, it was a bit like with the mythologic protection of this big father, the dictator being the protector of the minorities. And when things changed, many Christians were obliged to go out because they were inside organic to the regime. And many came out because of the war. But then groups of Islamic extremists that have been also aggressive toward Muslims themselves, not only Shiite, but even brother in the same Sunni context. They've been using a kind of religious discrimination against Christians. And in the day, during the day, the American army was in power, but in the night, it was the terrorists who were in power. And we should say that many terrorists have been sent by the Syrian regime to challenge the American army. So there is these extremists, you don't know who are using them. And in the big stream, those who are hearing us, they are good people living a normal life. It's difficult to understand how things work in the world. But there is a stream, a black stream, where mafias interested in money and drugs and all kind of dirt trades, and religious extremisms, and secret services or corrupted parts of secret services are fishes that swim together and interact more than what we are able to imagine. When you are living in a clandestine mentality and in a conspiracy mentality, then you became part of it. So it is a must for the Syrian revolution to be able to control the ground and to avoid what happened in Iraq. It will happen in Syria. I'm afraid that in some places it will happen if the international community stay watching.
What is your lasting hope for the people of Syria as they stand at this tumultuous crossroads in their long history?
I mean, you know, Syria, it is not rhetoric, it is a fact. Syria has been the cradle of civilizations. Before Christ already, Syria was so plural in languages and cultures. In a town like then Dura Oropos, in the second century, beginning of the third, you have a town where the old temple of Baal, of the ancient god, is close by the most ancient decorated synagogue, close to the oldest paint church in the world, and all these people were living in a village, I mean in a town, in a common context of life. And there was also a mitreo, a place of worship for Zoroastrian coming from Persia, and Mass Day and all this, you know. So pluralism is the real deepest identity of Syria. And afterward, the typical Syrian town is an Arabic town where Muslims, Christian, Jewish live together, and where also people of other languages like Kurdish or Armenians are in town, and the Arabic idea of a town is a very ecumenic, hospitable, and pluralistic one. In this sense, we want to go back. We want to discover this again, to use again, to put in value this past, this memory, this common reality, this common memory.
You recently said that you're homeless, that you're an empty body that's traveling around the world, but that your soul is in Syria. What role do you see yourself playing in the country's future?
What role I'm playing now? I'm now speaking with you, and I've spoken yesterday and the day before. From the time I left Syria, and even before, I was on the media all the time and speaking everywhere, because we have to face a lie system that is using Islamophobia feelings in order to paralyze the initiative of the international community in assisting and protecting the Syrian population from the repression. So we have to fight back somehow this, seeking the protection of the Syrians and their desire for real democracy. Even the Pope, the night of Easter, he said, there is legitimate request of the Syrian society should be answered. So this is my role now. I have home everywhere. I tell you, the Canadian Syrian have received me so warmly. I really also, even in Washington, D.C., I was received there by Syrians so warmly.
So I guess I have to ask then, do you hope to return to Deir Marmusa Monastery one day?
Yes, certainly yes. And I have full confidence that I will. In the same time, all this turmoil has has somehow freed my life. A new chapter started. I was already in Kurdistan, where we have started a new monastic community there. So I feel now a man on the road for larger perspective. I'm fighting for, in my email in Arabic I wrote, I'm exiled and upset. Okay, but even when I will go back to Syria, I feel I will take care of exiled people, of people who have lost their homes. I want to go with somehow this hope for a global civil society where the human rights and real democracy and religious gifts, the treasure of the religious traditions and the mystery of the faith in Jesus will be offered to the world.
Well, it's certainly quite a mission you have before you, Father, healing the wounds of war and spreading your message. Father Paolo, we want to thank you so much for being here at Salt and Light today and want to wish you all the best in your ministry in the coming years.
Thank you to you, and we see each other in Syria and the Mamusa. I hope that all those who are watching, they say, okay, immediately when it will be possible, enough security, we go to Syria. Syria is nice. We need tourists to rebuild the country.
We certainly look forward to it, Father.
God bless.
Thank you. It has been said in the past that all roads lead to Damascus, and for today's world, perhaps nothing could be truer. The conflict in Syria has drawn the attention, ire, and concern of every major government from around the world. Yet amongst all the violence and suffering, it is the well-being of those on the ground that is often overlooked in this high-stakes game of geopolitical chess. It is those like Father Paolo who give a constant reminder of the suffering borne by the people and a voice for their hope for lasting peace. That's all for Catholic Focus. If you have any questions or comments, email us at focus@saltandlighttv.org.